Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is Saturday, August the 3rd. And I realize I've been doing these since May, so I guess I've been doing live streams for about 3 months now in the morning. So yeah, it's Saturday, so I never know quite who's going to turn up for Oh, good morning, Sam. I was just going to say, I'm not sure who's, I imagine you're probably up at this point on the Saturday, but I'm never quite sure who's going to be up. And Joanne, good morning. Yeah, this is the humidity's just, morning. The humidity's just killing me today. It's, I just can't, it's supposed to cool off, I think, in the middle of next week. Monday's going to be a joy. It's going to be like 90 something in New York City, and I have to be there waiting online. I think this is at Javits though, where I'm going to, where my guru is going to be. So if I recall correctly, Johnny, it's gross. It really is. It's like I've just had enough, you know. I think she's going to be in Javits. So as I recall, last time she was in Javits, we actually were able to line up indoors, which is good because I'm going to already be making the long walk from Penn to Javits. And I know there's a 7, but then I got to go to Times Square and I go back up, and it's a pain in the neck at rush hour. So I just thought, no, it's just easier to just walk straight up. Takes about half an hour to walk up to Javits, so I'm just going to do that. But yeah, so it's going to be very busy, very active. Yuck. I think the Javits definitely does have AC. I used to go there for Book Expo. I used to go there for, there were several other conferences that I used to go to all the time over in Javits, and Javits is huge too. But I remember that they had it there. I feel like they had it there the last time that they were there. She used to do the Manhattan Center, which is right near Penn. I mean, you can it's like almost across the street. It's near the New Yorker Hotel. But this one's going to be up the street, so I'll be going up there on Monday, very early in the morning. And I did manage to connect with my friend, and she's going to. We're going to try to meet for coffee up there after. But she was saying, "Oh, do you want to meet me at noon?" I was like, "The program starts at 11. She's probably not even going to start seeing people till 11:30." So I said it's going to have to be sometime in the afternoon. So I just told her, if you're flexible. I mean, if she's not available, then she's not available. But I told her, I said, I think I don't know if she quite. I kind of said to her, I said, this it's variable. I could be in and out in an hour. I could be in and out in 4 hours. I just don't know. You never know, and it's better not to sit there looking at your watch, placing a timetable on it. It's always a bad idea when you go to see the guru. But in any case, today is the Dream Workshop at 2. It's seriously, and I feel like the more expectations you go in with, the farther away you get from the thing you're expecting. So I'm just, I've learned that over the years. So, we'll just, we just go with the flow. It could go really fast or not. So anyway, it's going to be a busy weekend. Like I said, I have the Dream Workshop this afternoon. I have a few people. It's a little bit smaller group because a couple people were not, the longer you wait, because there was going to be a couple of people that I have, let's see, I think I've got I think there's going to be 5 of us total, and one person couldn't make, is not sure that they can actually come in, but they actually sent me the text of their dream so that we could discuss it. So, so anyway, so we got that going on this afternoon. I see more people are signing up for the Chiron workshop, which is next week. So, not next week, sorry, it's the 17th. I gave myself a Saturday off, but I'm teaching almost every Saturday. I'm teaching on the 17th. I'm teaching Reiki 2 on the 24th. I have to put the materials back together and send those to Corinna, and I was working there yesterday. I ended up having 2 back-to-back Rahani sessions because somebody who had done my free session came in and booked 3. So that was great. You'll be signing up Thursday. Awesome. Yes, that'll be great because I've already got like 3 people, I think. I don't have an upper limit for the class. I'm not saying it's got to be X number of people and then that's it. But the more the merrier. And I also want to make sure that my Zoom is working properly because actually it's not my Zoom, it's my computer. When I try to open that, and if I try to show share screen and show slides, everything just wants to slow down. My modem last night was making these noises. I'm like, what is it doing? Is it getting ready for liftoff? The Xfinity's modems are just rubbish. They just are. So, yeah, I don't know. I want to make sure that that's all. Of course, it's going to be during Mercury retrograde, not the best time to be sorting it out. But we do have a really good new moon coming up tomorrow. New moon in Leo. And this one is, yeah, it's a fiery new moon. And really, really good. Even in spite of retrograde, what I've been seeing is that it is really an excellent time to start some new things. Yeah, and that's the day I'm having my call with my fellow professors about the school that I'm opening. So I think that's like a great start to that. As a friend of mine pointed out the other day, they said, well, because I'm thinking this is not a great time to be starting the school during Mercury retrograde. And they said, well, actually, you're not starting it. You've been planning it all along. So you're just finishing up. And a lot of messages I got this morning were around finishing, getting stuff finished, clearing the way for new beginnings. That seems to be kind of the theme, which totally makes sense. Not only because we're moving into Mercury retrograde season, but also because we are moving into, Virgo season as well. And Virgo, of course, is very much about details, getting things right, organization. Virgo is associated with the Hermit card, and of course this is going to be towards the end of August. But that of course has to do with the way in which we take time out for wise reflection, and that's interesting because the card that I pulled for this morning to talk about on this live stream is actually one I've pulled a few times for us here in the Osho Zen deck. And let me just see if I didn't mix it into the bottom. I always do that. I'll always be like, oh yeah, let's talk about this card. And then I go and I start shuffling the deck, and then I'm like, well, wait, where is it? And the one that came up was this one. It's the Maturity card, okay? Which is the Ace of Pentacles. And I actually did pull the book on this because I was interested to see what the commentary was on it from the authors. But there was another thing that had popped into my mind the other day that I was going to mention today, because I was watching this. Like I said, there's another live stream that I watch regularly, and it's somebody who does it's completely unrelated to this. It's like musical technical analysis. Guy does musical technical analysis. And recently he had analyzed, Celine Dion's performance at the Paris Olympics. Now she's got that, what is it called? Stiff something syndrome, stiff person syndrome. Like it's something, whatever it is, it's affected her ability to sing. So people said, oh yeah, her singing at the Olympics was like a real triumph for her, that she was actually able to perform. But what he had pointed out was that this was actually it was actually pre-recorded. And the thing is, the way you know it's pre-recorded, because it was pitch corrected to all high hell. I mean, you could see it. And, but that said, it wasn't like he wasn't trashing Celine Dion and saying, oh, she's a liar. He doesn't ever trash anybody on these things. Ever. I mean, he's found nice things to say about Yoko Ono's singing, and I mean I love Yoko Ono. I have to say, she's like a really, really cool person. As a singer, I'm like, that's a little bit of a challenge. I'm not quite sure how I feel about her voice, or how a lot of people feel. But he managed to find nice things to say about it. So I'm like, this is not somebody who's looking to like rip apart. But I think the point of what I wanted to say was not even so much about, because then he had to make a second video because everybody told him he was a liar, he was disgusting, and he should be ashamed of himself for doing this video. And I'm like, first of all, literally the commentary suggested that nobody actually watched it, what he had said. I guess they were saying that everybody else was saying, oh no, she did this fully live. And it's like, yes, she was physically there, and she sang to a track that she actually did record. But somebody actually had gotten a video of the rehearsal, and he showed it. And he's like, look, the way that they're doing the rehearsal, he says, if this was a legitimate music rehearsal, they would be like, she would be doing mic checks and vocals. They weren't doing any of that. It was just how well could sing along to the backing track. So, they actually proved it. But everybody else is going, oh no, it was fully live. So people are just like dumping on him like he's a piece of crap. And it's like, and I was like, I don't know. I just find that kind of behavior on the internet annoying. But a lot of it, but it did raise the question for me of the way in which people, when we talk about critique, okay, when we talk about analysis and critique of something, and you run into this, it's one of these backlashes that you'll see against academia is like, stop critiquing my stuff. And the thing is, people have to understand that critique, because we always think of the word criticize, right? When we think we're being criticized, that somebody's basically putting us down. That's the way we assume criticism is. It's putting somebody down. But critique and criticism, there's also critical thinking. That has a lot to do with the way in which we take something apart and we think about what things do we agree with and what things do we challenge. And when you're doing something like a very technical technique, really the thing that's being critiqued is the production in this case. It's not about the singer, it's about who's produced it and why did they produce it this way. Because a lot of times what you'll see with music production these days is that they use Melodyne, they use one of those software things, and because they say it's faster, is what I've had other musicians tell me, oh, well, it's faster to do it that way. Because you don't have the money to do 8 million takes in a studio, so it's faster for them to just fix your voice. But what they do is they don't actually listen to the voice. They just say, oh, here's the closest pitch, and we're going to pull it, and then you end up sounding like a machine. And that's what the problem is that he says a lot of the time. And was the same with this performance. There's places where she's singing, and all of a sudden the way the note's held, you're just like, ooh, that's really weird. It doesn't sound like a human being. And that's the point. Like, why do you they probably didn't need to do it this way. Probably her natural vocal would have been good enough, and that's usually what the critique is. So a critique does not necessarily mean that somebody's trashing you or saying that you're a piece of rubbish or whatever. I mean, that's not what a critique is. A critique is listening to something and taking something that you say and saying, okay, you're saying this, and here's what I'm seeing. What about this? Like trying to get, if you ever, if anybody, well, I don't know if anybody who's on right now did, but if you ever went to school in England, did undergraduate in England, I did part of my literature degree in England and at University of Reading, and it's very, very different from what I would experience here in the USA, where yes, you would have professors who would read your papers and who would critique them and write, make notes on them and so forth. Something that's a lot harder now to do nowadays, like when I'm having to grade papers in Canvas, it's like I have to sit there. Typically what I'll do is I type my comments out in advance and then I copy and paste them into the thing because I can't go through and like red pen it, because which is the way I always used to like to do it, because a lot of times there's multiple things going on when I'm critiquing a paper. It's like, okay, there's how clearly did you communicate this? How good is your writing? And if there's problems with your writing, if you're continually making a mistake or using sentence fragments or stuff like that, I need to be able to point that out to you, that this is something you shouldn't do in a paper. Like if you want to be a nice clean paper, you need to write complete sentences. You need to write, you can't write it like you're writing a text message. You've got to write it out this way. Then you've also got to talk about the content. And also because I'm doing things in a particular format, I use MLA9 because it's just easy. I mean, trying to get students to do Chicago and stuff like that. I know our department chair is like, oh, I think that would be better. I'm like, oh, let's talk about citation versus bibliography format and just watch everybody's head explode. Canvas is weird. My college designed their own platform. Yeah, you know what? There's a lot. I have worked on other platforms besides Canvas. I worked on a different one at Rutgers. I can't remember what it was, but. And Blackboard, I think, is even worse. Canvas is, I'm used to it after all these years, but it's not my favorite. And students try to use Canvas's idiosyncrasies to get away with saying, oh, but professor, I did my exam. And I'm like, no, it doesn't even show that you signed in, so no, you didn't. APA 7 is my bane. I'd use APA in library school, and it was, it's, there's definitely, there's all the different, the formatting. But what I have is that I also, if they're not doing the formatting correctly, I have to comment on that as well. So saying all of those things doesn't mean you suck and I hate your paper. I mean, saying those things is just kind of like, look, I'm trying to get you to think about these things. And actually, as the professor, as the professional, I'm trying to tell you, this is how you do this kind of writing. It's not my opinion. It's not me saying, it's not me bashing you for what you're doing. It's me, and a lot of people seem to feel that way. I remember when I was living in England, I was staying in a house down in Plymouth with a guy who was, the owner of the house was a professor at the University of Plymouth, and he was a writing professor. And he had written several books. In fact, he gave me a copy of one of his short story collections, which I haven't read it yet, actually, because I was in the middle of doing a lot of my own writing while I was there. And I didn't have any of my books. I would have traded with him, so he could have seen some of mine. but he was, super nice guy. And like I said, we didn't really interact that much. It was just kind of like I would see he would come down, make his coffee. If I happened to be down getting something, I would just say, "Oh, good morning," and then he'd go off and do his thing, and I'd go off and do mine. But I remember one day I was out hanging laundry out in the garden because there's no clothes dryer, so you put everything out in the garden on the washing line. And he was out. It was a nice day there. It was probably like 65. So for them, for in England, that's like, well, it's sunny. Everybody get out in their shorts and everything. And for me, I'm still cold. But he was outside and he was sitting. He stopped. And he's like, "Can I ask you something?" He's like, "What is it?" Is it me? He's like, he says, when I'm critiquing people's work, he's doing it in the very normal British academic way. Because that's what I was starting to say. When you are actually in a tutorial in a British university, you have to defend. Like if I write a paper about, I don't know, Shakespeare, one of Shakespeare's tragedies or something, I have to defend. They'll say, "Oh, okay, well you've said this here, so well, tell me more about this, or can you tell me something about that?" Like there's a way, they're trying to not just show that you just went through the motions and did a paper. They want to know that you really understand this and that you can talk about the subject that you've just researched, right? This is what it is. It's critical thinking. It's not just like, I just slop something out to fill the assignment. It's just that I also have given this some thought. Or if you haven't given certain things some thought, then that's where your tutor or your professor is there to say to you, "Okay, well, here's some other things that you need to think about." Or here's areas where you could potentially improve. Because again, you're not going to go in and write. It's not going to be a perfect thing every time. And it's interesting how that's what we've come to expect. Maybe this is why AI has gotten such prevalence, because it's like, oh, we want something that's just going to do it perfectly every time. I'm sure you have loads of critiques on my Etruscan essay. I'm not a very academic, just resourceful and passionate. I welcome the criticism, though. It makes me better. Yeah, well, and that's just it. And to me, it depends on what you're writing. Like if you're submitting something to an academic journal, then, it doesn't matter. I've submitted things to academic journals and had them send it back with all kinds of scathing stuff. And I think I consider myself to be a pretty good writer, okay? It all depends on who's reading it, too, and what perspective they're coming from. Oh, you're not coming from the perspective that I like, so, and I'm sure your essay is fine. It's just, but you know what I mean? But yes, but if people, it's sometimes, yes, and there have been times that I've done something, I've presented it to people, and if they just say, "Oh, that looks great," I'm like, "Thank you, but that's not really what I'm looking for. I want somebody to tell me a little bit about, like, this seems right here, this doesn't seem right here," because the whole point is that you want to make it better. If you give it to an editor and they just say, "Yep, looks good," hand it back, that's, I don't know. Unless it has been perfected, but typically there's something there to be talked about, or at least to be developed, when we're doing stuff. Agreed, yeah. So it all depends on the audience there. But this was the thing. It was a lot of people, and this was interesting because I was watching this video, and a lot of it has to do with music and the way that people expect that everything is going to sound, that in order to be a perfect singer, you have to sound like a piano, because that's A440 tuning, which you're not, okay? And similarly, I've turned in an academic paper and I'm going to write it like I'm an undergraduate freshman and I'm going to write it like a PhD. Well, of course you're not. And I don't necessarily expect that they will. I'm not necessarily going to give them a bad grade for writing, where they're at. And frankly, get me started on K to 12, but they're not necessarily coming in with all the skills, and we've been told that. So it's like, okay, but my job is to say, okay, let me explain to you how to do this. And those comments get ignored. I remember Cynthia Eller telling me, she's the one, she's very controversial in the pagan community for the stuff she's written. And again, she's written some stuff I agree with and some stuff that I decidedly don't agree with, but she was a colleague of mine. My critiques were always on citations, even though I used Peria program that saved my life. Yeah, and you know what? It's the fact that we have all of these programs and these citation creators and stuff. See, that's just the thing. Now I'm going to sound old. Back in my day, when I had to use the book and I had to do everything on a freaking old school, word processor or typewriter, I had to chisel it on stone tablets. It's just, to remember the days when you had to go through the book to type your citations and then have to get the spacing right in your program and all that kind of stuff. It was, you still have to do a little of that, but it's not so severe. but it's very much, there's an expectation of perfection right out of the gate. And actually, this kind of does dovetail with my topic. So I'm going to read you this little bit. My pages are falling out of my book. But I'm going to read you this bit on the Ace of Pentacles here. So we have the card. It says, the figure stands alone, silent, and yet alert. The inner being is filled with flowers that carry the quality of springtime and regeneration wherever he goes. This inner flowering and the wholeness he feels affords the possibility of unlimited movement. Can move in any direction. Within and without, it makes no difference, as his joy and maturity cannot be diminished by externals. He has come to a time of centeredness and expansiveness. The white glow around the figure is protection and light. All of life's experiences have brought him to this time of perfection. And what it says is, when you draw the card, know well that the moment carries a gift. For hard work well done. Your base is solid now, and success and good fortune are yours, for they are the outcome of what has already been experienced within. Okay, so that's the meaning given in this book for that particular card. And kind of almost to the point of what I've digressed into, not entirely intentionally here, but it's the idea that through trial and error, through mistake, through experience, that's how you learn things. You don't come out of the womb and or walk into school or whatever and know it. I mean, the whole point is that you are to learn it. And we all have things that we have to learn, even things that we're pretty good at. There's still probably things that we could, things change, you know, like I work in the classics, classics department. There's a lot, like there could be a theoretical stuff, certainly about mythical literature or about certain civilizations that as new evidence comes to light, things may change. In the sciences, things should be changing all the time in theory, because, you have certain things that are kind of established as scientific law, or at least as very, very solid theory. But if new information comes in from better technology or something, then you have new information. You incorporate that new information, or you see where it fits in, or where the old model might have to be changed, right? And that's the way it should be with us as well. I mean, as new information comes in, we are operating from a base of experience. And when you operate from a base of experience, it is a kind of a unique gift, because you are in a space where you know enough to be solid, you know enough within yourself about what you know, maybe about what you don't know. And you've probably been through enough mistake making to get to a point where you can say, okay, so if you're doing something, if something in the external world is challenging what you feel to be true, or what you have experienced as true, you know whether or not you need to accept that outside critique, or whether you need to reject it. There's a habit today of saying that anybody who critiques anything is just being nasty, mean, and trolling. Okay. Which is not the case. You have to be able to have conversation. If you're going to be following the rules of that kind of debate, then you need to be able to say, okay, well, where are the flaws in this argument, or even if you don't want to call them flaws, what might be missing, or what might be added to this, and like I said, and sometimes the things, like when I do a lot of editing for writers, I said, okay, a lot of times the content is fine, yeah. The content is fine, and so, but it's just that there might be details, because as we're writing, like I know as I'm writing, I go back and it's just kind of like, oh, why did I write that sentence that way? I mean, you just get it out. You're not going to. I have some friends who attempted to write like stories. I have one friend who was writing a mystery novel, and it was like, and they had a really, really pretty decent first chapter, and I had kind of mentioned a few connections and things, and they said, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about this and that. And then they were like, well, I can't go forward until I have every detail right. And I'm like, yes, you can. You want to go through and get the story out, you clean it up later. I mean, that's what second and third drafts are for. Or 100 drafts, however many you do before you feel in yourself that you've done the right thing, that you're satisfied. A lot of times too, that's the thing when it comes to projects and creative work. It's called a rough draft, exactly. Kind of the inside-outside thing is that there's a lot of times when we are doing something, when we are expressing ourselves in some way, when we are doing something creative, whether this is the work that we get paid for, whether this is just something else we're creating and putting out there for public consumption of some type, we're doing it, everybody has a different standard of what's good enough to go out there, right? Some people are perfectionists and they can't, unless everything is just, unless they're, in other words, they're always critical of it, and they're never quite satisfied with it. Now, as I mentioned before, it's one of the opening things I say actually in Death and the Maiden is the definition of perfection, or the Latin word perficere, which just means to be done, to be finished. At what point are you done? When have you perfected it? It's done, I think of Sylvia Plath at the beginning of the Edge poem. The woman is perfected. She's done. I mean, that was quite morbid, but it was. But it is to the point that you're not really perfected until you're totally finished. And at some point, and it's kind of an interesting idea, because we also think that perfect meets some kind of very, very high ideal or standard. Now, it's understood that when we have a craft or there's something we're working at, we want to improve at it. We want to make it, I'm doing it this way, this is good, I want to make it better. It's fine. It's fine to do that, or to want to do that. But we also have to recognize that with certain projects, like writing a novel or something, it's like at some point you're done. You're done. And you need to be satisfied with the fact that you're done. You may look back at it and go, oh yeah, maybe I could have done this and that. But at some point you're done. So let's see. Okay, it's because we don't teach how to write properly in grad school. We still had a class on how to write an essay or research paper properly. Because the younger generations don't know. Yeah, well, exactly. And the fact that that's happening in grad school is a travesty, really. I mean, those are classes. The thing is, part of that problem, too, is that basic comp classes often, I've been told this by friends who have taught comp, and they're like, yeah, basically we're told, well, you just need to teach them how to fill a word count. So in other words, if the professor says it's 5,000 words, then this is how you fill 5,000 words. And I have had students tell me they'll constantly your daughter's a perfect example. Yeah, it's kind of like they'll say, and I will get that. I will be like, it's got to be 5 to 7 pages. Well, how many words is that? How many words do I have to have, professor? And I said, I do not want to hear a thing about word counts. I want you to fill those pages. And if it has to be slightly shorter, but it's more concise and it's clear, I don't care. I need you to answer the questions that I've asked you for this paper, and I need you to make your point, and I need you to make it clearly. I don't want you to be like, well, as I was saying in the previous 3 sentences from this book that I read, and let me tell you the entire title of the book all over again, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and I'm literally like sitting there, I'm like, this is what wants to be. This is why I'm like, I have like the wine scale. I'm like, they don't know how academic essays, argumentative, etc. No, they don't. They think. I did an experiment with students once where I said, let's walk you through the research process. So I said, here's the topic of your essay. I want you to go and show me, like literally take screenshots. That's all they had to do, was take screenshots of their searches and how they decided they were going to go about searching, to how they were going to, okay, I have this paper topic. This is how I'm approaching it, right? All of them, like, okay, there was, this time I just took an essay topic. Let's just say it was about comparing the Shield of Achilles from Homer's Iliad to the Auden poem, which is called Shield of Achilles, which I don't do anymore because it's too easy for AI to write something like that. But so what's the first thing they do? They go to Google and put, who is Achilles? Now, mind you, we've discussed Achilles in class. I'm like, this is not how you start this. And then they're all going and they're pulling in stuff from these homework helper sites. And I've literally said, if you use a homework helper site, you're getting an F. I don't like they're not academic sites. And so it's, yeah, there has to be, you try to get people to do critical kind of work. I actually have one class where I don't do papers at all. I literally give them academic pieces. I said, you have to write and write your deconstruction of this. I want you to go through paragraph by paragraph. I want you to tell me what the author's saying in every paragraph. I want a summary sentence. And then I want you to summarize, look at the structure. I want you to also tell me about the credentials of the person who wrote it. I want you to look them up. And I want you to go, and then at the end, I want you to tell me the summary of their argument and what you, having read the text that they're talking about, how your experience compares. And my students are like, what? We have to read this whole article? It's 20 pages and we have to conjunct. I said, yes, you do. You're doing that instead of a paper. But it's because they don't know how to read these things. And I'm like, and yes, you don't have to do that every time you read. Yeah, you don't have to do that every time you read. But I'm like, I'm trying to get you, you won't have to do this every time. It will be something that will become naturally for you after a while. You just read through it, and once you've read enough articles, you have to make some notes, and nobody takes notes. It's like, they don't like to read and they don't like to take notes. They think I can just sit there with my phone and take a picture of whatever the professor has on the board or on the screen. And I'm like, no, it's not gonna cut it. Again, I don't want to say it's all, but it's pretty prevalent. So anyway, I didn't mean to quite get off on this academic subject. The point really that I was making was that there's internal and external critique, okay? And critique is one of those things that when we have an internal critic, and then we have what we learn in the external world. When you get to a point where you have, you have enough experience maybe to argue with your own inner critic, but you get to a point where you have once you have what this card has to do with is you have a certain foundation in yourself. You have a certain rootedness where you don't know everything, right? But you do know who you know more about who you are. This is why they say as you get past your 20s and into your 30s and towards your 40s, how you tend to be more solid. Why people don't give as much of a crap about things, because it's just kind of like, yeah, well, whatever. And also because external social opinion starts to matter less as you have more of your own identity. You don't need other people to fill in the blanks for you on a lot of things. So you reach a point of experience. It's not that you're shutting out other people or other people's critiques or what other people have to say, but you can take it from a point of view of not feeling like every time someone challenges you that somehow this is a blow to your ego and that you have to be filled with self-doubt. Once you feel comfortable with something, someone can challenge you. Someone can even say that you're wrong. And you know what? You're like, oh, okay, well, that I didn't know that. Thanks. I'll have to learn something new this time. So it's not, there's kind of the inner, and I feel like the development of the personality, when you reach that point of experience and maturity, that's the point when you can be solid in what you know, what you've experienced, and what you know your path is, okay? So I think a lot of times when this card comes up, it's saying, recognize that you're rooted in your own foundation. And being rooted in your own foundation means that, and like I said, people can critique you, and you will know the difference between, well, that's your opinion, or that's a projected agenda. Like if somebody says to me, oh, well, you must be an unhappy person because you don't have any children. And I'm like, no, that's a life choice I made, and I'm perfectly happy with it. You're saying that to me because you can't imagine what life would be like without children. Okay, that's just an example, this is, things that you hear. That's, maybe you personally wouldn't be happy without children. I know I am. But it's not like I would sit there and go, oh, gee, I don't know, maybe they're right. Maybe I should have done this. Maybe you don't do that as much, You reach that point of maturity. And I think sometimes when we're in the midst of change, we have to kind of go around that axis of who we are and where we're at, I don't think, because I think that you're always going to be true. You always need to be true to that. And if you kind of get back to that, as well as to whatever your spiritual guide, whatever your spiritual source is, which is going to be in harmony with that to a certain degree with who you are and where you're going and what you're doing, you're kind of at that point. And Lisa said, younger kids look at me when I write notes like I have 8 heads, but I'm at Epsilon Honors. So yeah, no, I take tons of notes. I take notes at conferences and everything. And you said, I don't know, I question having my kid all the time. Well, and that's a whole nother subject. Yes, I've heard people say, I remember I've run into little old ladies who work with my mom. She says, I love my kids, but if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have bothered. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not suggesting that. Some people have their kids, love them, and are happy with their decision, but everybody's different. Me personally, I could never see myself doing it. So anyway, our central card for today is morality. Funny, we're just talking about this, Queen of Clouds. That's the perfectionist energy. That's the one that says there's, and that's an interesting way to couch it, morality. And you love her dearly, but crap. Yeah, I've heard that a lot before too about people. The morality card is basically, yeah, it's kind of like the moral code of society, the expectation, the what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to be doing it. I mean, we can talk about morals in terms of treating each other decently and things like that, but this is a morality that gets beyond that. It gets into where we shame ourselves for just being who we are or liking what we like. You know, oh, you're not allowed to like this. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to, it's not socially acceptable for you to, think this or to think that or do this. And it's ridiculous. And I think we all end up finding kind of our tribe or our crowd, right? But morality can frequently, our sense of, and I think it's kind of a self-imposed morality. That's that social pressure, okay? And the inner feeling, yeah, because what it causes here is this split in the mind. We have the schizophrenia card, the Two of Swords. So this is the person who's stuck between two things and they're dangling in between. And as they say here, the only thing you can really do is kind of jump into the gap, figuratively, not literally. But there's a figurative letting go of the head and the heart because if we may have certain emotions around it and we may have certain thoughts around it. And that ends up making us divided. There's divided between what we know from experience is right for us, or we know what we feel, we know what our instincts are telling us, we know what direction we're being guided in by our own internal light. That could be reflected in the external world when we have a synchronicity where we feel something strongly and then all of a sudden we see it everywhere and we go, that might refocus our attention. But we can also allow things that criticize us or that hurt us try to redefine us, and that's distracting, really. And then the external feeling, we've got this consciousness card again, yeah, clarity, Ace of Swords. Think about not only thinking about things differently or a new way of thinking, but being very clear about what about your thoughts. You don't need it to be clouded by this split, which is both internal and external. Okay. And yeah, here's your culprit again, the mind. The mind gets involved, and there's that aspect of the mind and this aspect of soul that is the critic. And it is the thing, so when we hear these external moral judgments, that's the thing that kind of gets activated in us. That's kind of, I don't know if it's kind of like the Freudian superego, but there's something in us that gets activated and is constantly judgmental of what we're doing. And it tells us that it's not perfect. I mean, the morality card has to do with perfection. It's not right. And if you look at the figure on this card, I mean, it's this woman, but she's very puritanical looking. And it's like over her heart, it almost looks like there's can I deactivate it? Yeah. It's like there's a grill over her heart. Like it's like this is what's inside is like inside of a prison. But it's interesting that you'll see the orange color back here. Because the orange, if we think about that as being a fiery color, it's almost like there's a passionate emotion, or there's a rage, or even there's a creativity. There's something behind it, but it's behind this grate. And she almost looks like a Puritan here, like this idea of these values that actually take all of the fire and they kind of push it down. They suppress it in the name of what's supposed to be moral or righteous or good, but which is actually soul killing, right? And our external feeling is participation. Sorry, our outcome here. Participation. Okay? That's my card, yep. Participation. This is the idea that we want to participate in the world. We don't want to... So this means not judging ourselves so harshly and also not necessarily judging others so harshly. We need to find ways to talk to each other. And, and talking to other people doesn't mean that and that's just it. We don't automatically accept everyone else's opinion and say, oh, everyone else's opinion is right, automatically. It's not necessarily. There's a method in, we're going to go back to academia for a minute, called critical empathy. And that is something that we use a lot in the humanities. And critical empathy basically says that it was started by a scholar, and I can't think of her name, Spanish name, but I can't remember. She was, I think she was an anthropologist of religion. And she had gone into one of these communities in Pennsylvania where they had these women who were, they practiced this very strict form of fundamentalism where they believed they had to be obedient to their husbands and they all spoke in tongues and stuff like that. Now, a lot of people who are more liberated and empowered would be like, oh God, those women are stupid, like, you know, subjecting yourself to a man, like how, you know, or there'd be a lot of judgment about it, right? So the anthropologist goes in and she says, well, no, I'm not going to go in there and judge them and say, well, you're stupid and wrong for being this way. She's going to say, well, no, they obviously come from a certain place. They have this. So you appreciate the person. You validate who they are. You know, say, okay, this is the choice that you've made. This is what you think is right. This is what you feel happy with. You know, we accept that, which is kind of the same thing we do when we do coaching. It's just like, okay, well, this is your worldview. That doesn't mean you can't critique it. If you say, yes, but I see that it's causing this harmful thing, you know, this particular action or this particular way of thinking. So you can be empathetic, but you're still allowed to critique. Okay? You're still allowed to critique, because critique doesn't mean you're invalidating the person. And that's the way it often is taken today. Like I was saying about when I was living at that at Tom's house in Devon, he's like, what is it? He's like, I'm critiquing them according to what this is. And they're all like, well, you've just, you know, thanks a lot. You just ruined this. Or he's like, I'm just doing the academic critique. He's like, and there's a lot they can improve on here, you know? Now you know why this message is coming in for me this morning. Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad we you know, there's that epiphanal moment, right? That aha moment. Yeah, I mean, there's this strong sense that if somebody is critiquing us, then that means that, you know, we're a bad person. Now, maybe they know more than us, maybe they don't, but not everything is a matter of opinion. Sometimes people are saying, okay, you know, you're like, let's just say if somebody's arguing something based on a certain theory, if they say, yeah, but that's not exactly how this theory works, then that's a conversation you want to have. Most academics will welcome that kind of critique, because unless they really feel that the reviewer just literally doesn't get the way that they're approaching the subject, okay? That sometimes can be the thing. People sometimes don't get the way that they're approaching the subject. But, and I've seen that too with reviewers, where reviewers will just say, oh, well, you know, like if somebody's writing something from like more of like a field anthropological point of view, good morning, from like a field anthropological point of view, then and somebody else doesn't want to write it from experience, says, oh no, you should just be writing it from the point of view of this theory. Well, that's not what the scholar's trying to do. So, you know, it's sometimes people do get the critiques wrong. I mean, but that's the whole point. The whole point is that you're supposed to have these conversations. In a way, it almost goes back to Socratic dialogue, at least what the theory of it is that, you know, the person who knows, it's like you keep asking questions until you get to the point where you realize what you don't know. And there's a lot of things we don't know. And again, a lot of this is intellectual discourse. It only goes so far. But the idea that somebody would do an analysis of something, and that analysis is just their opinion and isn't informed by anything than just their opinion, and the fact that there's a critique in it means that they hate this person and they're slagging them off. That's just not how any of that works. And you need to be secure. You have to reach a point where you're secure enough in yourself where you say, okay, if somebody doesn't agree with my opinion or doesn't like what I have to say, then they don't agree with my opinion and they don't like what I have to say. If they have something substantial to say about like, well, but I don't think you thought about this or that, then that's something actually that could help expand your horizons. That's a place where you could learn, right? But a lot of times we don't. We kind of want to shut that out. So, and maybe it's because we live in a world with too much information. I feel like we should have a couple of runes today as well. Interesting. Okay. So we're starting with our rune Soelu. Okay, so Soelu is about the sun. It's about shedding light on things, bringing clarity to things. In a situation where we have Riva, where maybe there has been a disconnect or a broken. This is usually about a failure that can occur, but it's a rerouting opportunity. Like there could be a split off from somebody, but then union and reunion are the destination. Interesting that comes up just before retrograde. We've talked about that with a lot of people, that there could be this union or reunion that goes on. But there's idea of a cycle, of the sense that we may be clear on something, and if we've gotten it wrong, then there's going to be a rerouting or a rerouting opportunity. And our third rune is Brikana, and Brikana is about growth. It's literally about, if you didn't plant the seeds right the first time, you replant them, and now something has a chance to grow and to what's the word? And to flourish. Whereas maybe before, if it failed, there may be a chance for somebody to refurbish or to redo something. So anyway, we're at 7:15. I am going to mention. I did not mention this yet. Probably by the end of this month, I might be shifting the time of these morning coffees more to 7 because the sun is going to be is rising closer to 6:30, and then it's going to be dark, and kind of the whole point is for me to not have to put a lot of glaring lights on early in the morning. It's when I have my morning coffee, and I have my morning coffee as the sun comes up. So as we move towards winter, I might actually move these just a little bit later. I don't know how that works for people. I mean, we can discuss that, but because I don't know if 6:30 a.m. is a good time for certain people, but I may want to move it to 7 just to. I'm basically following the sun, and then in winter we might move it to 7:30. So we'll see how it goes. But just so we can, I can come on, and then I'm not going to be a pitch black room, which unfortunately happens even if there's sunlight starting to come in. So you're good with it. Okay, cool. That's good. And, so anyway, we'll get to that later in the month, but thank you guys so much for joining me. I will be here tomorrow, but not Monday. Like I said, I've got the Chiron class, I've got the intuitive development class coming up this month, so definitely check those out at transitionlifecoaching.net if you're interested. Still also doing Rahani sessions. I'm doing remote and in person. Not looking forward to 6 months of winter up here. Oh, yeah, well, up where you live, I wouldn't be either, to tell you the truth. You're welcome. Okay, so everybody who joined me, thank you so much. I hope you have a great Saturday, and I will see you tomorrow morning. Take care.